In times of crisis, survival often depends not on modern tools, but on the knowledge carried from generations before. During the pre-war years, when industrial fertilizers were scarce and global supply lines uncertain, families and farmers had to rely on simple yet effective materials to keep their soil alive. They discovered certain natural ingredients that could summon earthworms, enrich soil and restore fertility almost overnight. And you know, one of those forgotten survival ingredients has such a remarkable effect that when poured into tired soil, worms can appear in as little as 3 days. This isn't folklore. It's a method recorded in farming journals, wartime diaries, and rural manuals from the late 1800s and early 1900s. Long before synthetic nitrogen fertilizers dominated agriculture, this organic material was the lifeline of gardens and small farms. Understanding how it worked then not only gives us a glimpse into survival strategies of the past, but also provides practical solutions for gardeners today. By the early 20th century, many farmers were already facing soil exhaustion. Land that had been tilled year after year without proper replenishment lost its vitality. Chemical fertilizers were beginning to appear, but they were expensive and not widely available in rural areas. Families had to find natural ways to keep their land productive, especially as the spectre of war loomed and self-reliance became more urgent. In this context, simple household materials became essential. Farmers and gardeners studied how nature replenished itself. They noticed that when certain foods or organic liquids were poured into the soil, worms appeared in greater numbers, and plant health improved dramatically. This wasn't just a matter of adding nutrients. The soil organisms themselves, especially worms, were drawn in, and they transformed poor earth into fertile ground. The ingredient many families relied on was sour milk. In households where fresh milk spoiled quickly without refrigeration, it was rarely wasted. Instead, people poured it into their gardens, mixed it with bran or oats, or used it to soak straw before adding it to the soil. This acidic, protein-rich liquid acted like a microbial starter. Within days, bacteria and fungi multiplied in the soil, breaking down organic matter faster and creating conditions that earthworms couldn't resist. Worms are naturally attracted to areas rich in microbial activity, because that is where their food supply lies. The sour milk created an environment full of fermenting organisms, producing smells and signals that drew worms up from deeper layers. Once they arrived, they began to aerate, digest and enrich the soil, leaving behind nutrient-dense castings. Families during the Depression and wartime years wrote about how quickly they noticed changes. Soil that had been lifeless started to crumble, and vegetables planted afterward grew stronger. To understand why worms showed up within 3 days, you need to see how soil life responds to sudden food surges. Sour milk is not a slow-release material. Unlike dry compost or manure, it is liquid, and its nutrients are instantly available to microbes. The bacteria multiply rapidly, and fungi establish hyphae across soil particles. This sudden bloom of life acts like a beacon to worms. The worms aren't after the milk itself, but the microbial feast it creates. They follow the trails of fermenting organic matter and congregate where food is abundant. In pre-Second World War gardens, this meant that a single application of sour milk to a tired patch of earth could spark a chain reaction. First, the microbes thrived, then the worms arrived, and soon the soil structure itself improved. Within days, the dull earth took on the smell and texture of a living system again. What farmers and homesteaders quickly learned was that the sour milk trick worked best when combined with what they called virgin soil. This was soil taken from a patch of ground that had not been overworked, often from the forest edge, a meadow, or even a nearby ditch where wild grasses thrived. Virgin soil was packed with dormant microbial spores and fungal fragments that could spring to life when given the right food source. When sour milk was poured directly into depleted garden beds, it sometimes fizzled out without much effect. But when a little virgin soil was added first, the result was dramatic. The microbes in that soil acted like seed stock. Given a sudden feed of dairy proteins and sugars, they multiplied at incredible speed, colonizing the surrounding earth. Worms were not far behind. This pairing, sour milk with virgin soil, became a quiet but powerful survival practice among those who understood the rhythm of the land. While rarely written about in textbooks, this practice appears in scattered journals, agricultural notes, and even in wartime family letters. One farmer in the Midwest recorded in the 1930s that pouring clabbered milk over oats in the garden drew worms by the dozen by the third day. In parts of Europe where dairy animals were common, sour milk and whey were poured over compost heaps and then mixed into vegetable plots, producing similar results. During World War II, when chemical fertilizers were diverted to the war effort and many families had to rely solely on what they could produce, these methods became invaluable. Victory garden manuals didn't always highlight them openly, but many homesteaders passed the knowledge by word of mouth. It was considered one of those home tricks that only those who practiced close-to-the-earth gardening really knew. For modern gardeners, this pre-war ingredient still works in the same way. If compost piles stall or if soil feels lifeless, a small pour of sour milk mixed with oats or bran can jumpstart microbial activity. But just like the gardeners of old discovered, the secret lies in pairing it with fresh, untouched soil. A handful from the forest floor, a scoop from beneath an old hedge, or even soil from a field margin can provide the microbial diversity needed to make the sour milk effective. Within days, worms begin to appear in greater numbers, their burrows making soil looser and more absorbent. Plants respond within weeks, growing in soil that has been transformed not just chemically but biologically. The lesson here is simple. Microbes and worms are partners, and feeding one means encouraging the other. So much of modern agriculture has, overlooked these small but vital traditions. Instead of nurturing microbial and worm populations, industrial farming often suppresses them with synthetic inputs. Yet, in times of scarcity, people return to the simplest methods available. And honestly, they often prove more effective than any manufactured product. Remembering these forgotten ingredients is not only about history, it's about resilience. For anyone interested in gardening, homesteading, or simply understanding how past generations survived, these methods carry lasting value. They remind us that fertility is not bought in a bag, but built in the soil itself, with the help of living organisms that respond to care and the right kind of food. The story of sour milk as a pre-World War II gardening survival ingredient is more than a curiosity. It's a lesson in resourcefulness, observation, and respect for the living systems beneath our feet. Within 3 days, worms arrived, because the soil was given what it truly needed: microbial food and microbial diversity. This partnership kept families fed through hardship and can still guide us today as we seek sustainable ways to grow. If you found this journey into forgotten gardening wisdom useful, be sure to subscribe to In the Beginning and share this guide with others who love exploring the resilience of the past. The soil has many secrets left to tell, and together we can bring them back to life.